If you believed only what you saw on websites, you'd think every company on earth is the leading provider, or trusted by the world's top brands, or reinventing the future of whatever category they're in. And then you talk to an actual buying committee and discover they've never heard of them. No surprise. The gap between what brands say about themselves and what the market can actually verify is the new credibility problem. It's gotten worse in the last few years as AI has made it increasingly easy to produce thought leadership that appears credible, meets SEO standards, and then quietly fades into obscurity. It doesn't show up in real conversations. It doesn't surface in shortlists. It does not get cited by anyone else. When we implement the PESO model as an operating system for our clients, we see this pattern over and over and over again. On paper, everything looks solid. The owned media is well written, the messaging is tight, the decks are beautifully designed, the case studies are polished within an inch of their lives. But when we zoom out and ask a very simple question, where, outside of your own channels, does anyone else confirm that you're good at this? Things get very quiet. The silence isn't just awkward, it's a business risk. Your buyers are overwhelmed and skeptical. They don't take your word for anything, not because you're untrustworthy, but because you sound the same as everyone else. So they start to triangulate. They look at analyst notes and peer communities. They skim trade publications and niche newsletters. They listen to conferences and podcasts and creators that they already follow. Increasingly, they also ask AI tools to summarize who actually knows what they're doing in a given space. If all of those signals are thin, or worse, inconsistent, and most of them are, you're operating at a structural disadvantage, no matter how strong your internal story is. That, in a nutshell, is what visibility engineering is trying to solve. It's not let's be louder on LinkedIn or let's publish more blog posts. It's let's be better corroborated. Of course, I'm biased toward integrated solutions. I don't see this as a PR problem over here, an SEO problem over there, and a content problem somewhere in the middle. It's a system problem. If your story is not backed up by third parties your buyers and AI systems already trust, you're effectively asking the market to take you at your word. And unfortunately, my friends, they will not do that. On this week's FinSucks podcast episode, I'll help you take the Bylined article ideas you created last week and move them into what we'll call corroboration loops. Think of them as the third-party credibility from friends, influencers, reporters, and more that you need to demonstrate to both humans and AI that you know what you're talking about.
If you're a communications pro who works hard, doesn't compromise quality, and gets the job done, welcome home. We'll share our tips, tricks, and stories, and together we will change the face of PR. Spin sucks, but we don't. With the Spin Sucks podcast, here's Gini Dietrich.
Welcome back to the Spin Sucks podcast. I'm Gini Dietrich. Before we get started, I have a little tidbit for you. Did you know that if you can't finish watching right now, you can subscribe to the audio version of this show? We're on all of the platforms where you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple, or you can subscribe to our newsletter at spinsucks.com and get it in your inbox every Tuesday. In the first two parts of this series, we focused on getting your own house in order. We started with buyer questions, and then we layered in author footprints. That combination, clear buyer questions, tight anchors, and visible experts, is the foundation of visibility engineering. But on its own, it's still an internal story. It's you talking about you on your stage with your microphone. Corroboration loops then occur when a story starts to echo, when others start to repeat your message. A corroboration loop is the moment you start to show up somewhere you don't own, in a trade publication, in an association journal, on a niche podcast, in a creator's newsletter, on a partner's blog. It's when the market starts to repeat what you've been saying, often in their own words, and points back to you as the source. It's when your competition points back to you as the source. That is the golden ticket for sure. From a PESO model perspective, this is the inflection point where your owned and earned media lock together. Let me talk you through how to do this. Say one of your top buyer questions is, How do we prove return on investment on integrated communications without relying on vanity metrics? You've already done the groundwork from earlier in this series. You've created an anchor article or guide on your site that walks through your approach, your framework, and a couple of real examples. You've assigned a specific leader with your author footprints, let's say it's your VP of communications, as the human that is attached to this answer. Their bio, their headshot, and their bylines all reinforce that this is their lane. Now, the corroboration loop starts when that same leader appears outside of your walls talking about the same thing. Since we spent some time last week creating Bylined article ideas, let's focus there first. They can publish a Bylined article in a trade publication about moving from impressions to integrated metrics. They reference the same framework. They include a simplified example. The article links back to your website on your deeper guide or your Anchor Hub. A few weeks later, they join a podcast or a webinar hosted by an industry association. The conversation centers on, again, how to measure comms in a way a CFO will respect. The host links to both the trade article and your original resource. Then a creator who covers marketing operations picks up the theme in their newsletter. They quote one of your VP's lines about vanity metrics being the junk food of reporting. And they link back to the trade article and to your guide or to your Anchor Hub as further reading. From your perspective, they might feel like three separate wins, right? You have a Byline article, you have a speaking slot, and you have a newsletter mention. Great to have, great for the ego. From a buyer's perspective, however, it feels a little bit different. They start to see a consistent pattern. The same person associated with the same ideas appearing in the places they already go to learn and decide. This is when people start to say to you, gosh, I keep seeing you guys everywhere. Again, another golden ticket. From an AI systems perspective, though, it feels different as well. It identifies an entity, your vice president of communications, and a topic, measuring integrated comms, that are repeatedly linked together across multiple domains with links and citations correcting those mentions to your own content. That's the kind of pattern large language models use when they're deciding whose definition, whose framework, and whose examples to surface when someone asks a related question. Designing a corroboration loop or two is helpful, just like publishing an Anchor Hub or two. Designing a content ecosystem, a complete, growing, scalable library of content that lives all over the web, is where you start to see success. The good news is you don't need a massive project to get there, so please do not let content ecosystem overwhelm you. If you have followed the earlier pieces in this series, you already have most of the ingredients. You have buyer questions, you have anchor content, and you have named experts. What you're doing now is deciding where to focus your proof and how to make it repeatable. You'll start by using the 6 Bylined article topics you created last week. Sit down and map the ecosystem for each topic. And what I mean by that is the 3 to 5 trade outlets your buyers read, maybe the 3 to 5 business publications your readers need. Maybe it's 3 to 5 publications that your consumers read, whatever it happens to be. What are those publications? The traditional media. Then add the association conferences and webinars that they attend, the niche newsletters or podcasts they share, and the partners or platforms that already have their trust. Now you can design the proof as you begin to write the articles. Ask yourself and your colleagues, what are we willing to put in public that would make a skeptical peer or an LLM say, okay, that's real. It might be a clean before and after results from a client, with appropriate permissions, of course, a piece of proprietary research, a framework you can actually use to run programs, or a set of benchmarks run from your work. It needs to be something that can be effectively conveyed in a Bylined article, a chart, a conference talk, or a podcast segment without losing its results or its effectiveness. When you look at it on one page, it should resemble a small ecosystem, not a random scatter plot, a handful of critical questions, each with a named expert, a short list of target experts, and a defined proof point. At this point, you're not just producing content, you're engineering your credibility, you're engineering your visibility. We've talked about how corroboration loops are the system. Now let's talk about how Bylined articles are the engine, and once we get that engine going, what good looks like. Many organizations still treat bylines as PR trophies. We got an article in X publication and it was on message and it had links to our website. Yay, us! Woohoo! The story is published and you may or may not share it internally or post it on social media. Perhaps it will be included in the next board update, perhaps not. You're definitely asked, okay, what's next as you recover from all the work you just did. There's no through line, no connection back to buyer questions, and no reason a buyer would recognize that article as a bigger story about how you solve their problem. In a visibility engineering context, a bylined article has a very specific job. It's the piece of content that makes your corroboration loop legible to humans and to machines at the same time. That means it has to do more than say, here's what we think. A useful byline usually does 4 things. Number 1, it names the buyer question explicitly in the words that real people actually use, not corporate jargon, not your shorthand, but real people, real words that real people use. Number 2, it offers a sharp, opinionated answer that is clearly grounded in real work. And opinionated is the key word here. Number 3, it carries some kind of proof that travels, a data point, a framework, a before and after story. And number 4, it creates a clean path back to your anchor hub so anyone or anything that wants to find more can find it in one click. If it doesn't do all 4 of those things, it might still be a nice article. It's just not doing the heavy lifting of a corroboration loop, and you're not engineering your visibility. This is where most thought leadership goes off the rails. Actually, most thought leadership goes off the rails because it's not actual thought leadership. But if it is actual thought leadership, this is where it goes off the rails. The topic might be adjacent to your category. So AI, innovation, future of whatever, but it isn't anchored to an actual buyer question. Or it's written so generically that it could have come from any vendor in the space, just like the copy on your website. Or it's stuffed with brand messaging instead of real insights, so editors, buyers, and algorithms all quietly shrug and move on. When you write with corroboration in mind, the brief changes. Instead of let's get a byline about measurement, the brief becomes we need a piece that answers how do we prove return on investment on integrated comms without vanity metrics in a way that a skeptical comms lead and their CFO will both respect, and that reinforces the framework in our anchor hub. That's a very different assignment. It forces focus. It forces you to decide what you're willing to stand on in public, and it forces you to line up the byline, the expert, and the anchor hub so they all tell the same story. It also makes the lives of your experts a lot easier. When the VP of Comm knows these are the 3 questions I own in the market, they're not reinventing their talking points every time they write, speak, or hop on a podcast. They're extending the same answer across different hosts, different formats, and different levels of depth and expertise. For a buyer, that feels like consistency. For the LLMs, it looks like a very strong signal. The same person, the same topic, showing up together over and over again across domains. None of this requires a giant reorganization. It does require you, though, to put some constraints around what good looks like. You can say, every byline we greenlight has to map to a specific buyer question and a specific anchor hub. If we can't do those 2 things, that's a no. There will not be a byline. You can also say, we don't measure success by raw placement counts or number of impressions. We measure it by how many of our priority questions now have credible third-party proof attached, and the AI is using us in their answers. You can also say, our spokespeople will have consistent bios, consistent titles, and consistent topic lanes across everything, website, media, events, and social, so there's no confusion about who owns what. Once those guardrails are in place, the PESO model does what it's supposed to do. Owned media gives you the anchors. Earned, especially bylines, interviews, and features, hosts your answers in trusted external spaces. Shared extends those assets into the feeds, communities, and group chats where buyers actually trade links and make sense of the world. Paid can, when it's used intentionally, amplify the handful of loops that are doing the most to de-risk you with the accounts that matter. From the outside, it does look like you're everywhere all the time on a small set of topics. From the inside, it feels so much calmer. You're not trying to have a hot take on every trend. You're choosing the questions that actually move revenue and build corroboration around those slowly and systematically. If you want a simple way to start, don't boil the ocean. Take the 6 bylined articles you sketched out last week and choose 1 or 2 that are closest to money or risk. For each one, ask yourself 3 questions. Do we have a clear anchor on our website that will answer this question in depth? Do we have a named expert who can credibly carry this answer in public? Do we know which 3 to 5 outlets, creators, or partners would be the right hosts for this story? If the answer is no to any of those questions, you've got to do the work to get to yes. Fix the anchor hub, clarify the expert, map the ecosystem. Then write 1 bylined article that ties all of that together and see it all the way through. Pitch, placement, link back to your anchor hub, share on social, amplify through paid, internal enablement so sales can actually use it. That's 1 corroboration loop. Do that a few times around your highest stake questions, and your content strategy starts to look a lot less like a random blog calendar and a lot more like a credibility engine. This isn't about feeding the algorithm or winning vanity awards. It's about making sure that when your ideal buyer opens a browser, asks an AI, scrolls their favorite newsletter, or preps a vendor list, they don't just see what you say about yourself. They see your story reflected back by the people and platforms they already trust. Analysts, trades, creators, peers, pointing straight back to the anchors that you control. That's a corroboration loop. That's visibility engineering. And that's how you stop shouting, "We're the leading provider," into the void and start building the kind of external proof that actually gets you chosen. If you want to learn more about how to create your corroboration loops, join us in the SpinSucks community. It's a great place to get advice, brainstorm ideas, and build real relationships with your peers. You can find us at spinsucks.com/community. That's spinsucks.com/community. And make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. We're posting tips, how-tos, cheat sheets, and more every week. I'll see you next week.